Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're tackling a really interesting concept called hauntology.
Hmm.
It might sound a bit heavy, maybe academic at first
It
glance.
can, yeah. But stick with it, because it's actually a pretty useful way to think about how the past, well, how it hangs around.
Right, how it shapes the present in ways that maybe aren't obvious, making things feel incomplete somehow.
Exactly that. It's this feeling that the past is still present, even when it's technically gone. And the name itself, it's a clever little blend, isn't it? Haunting and ontology.
Ontology, the study of being, of existence.
Precisely. So it's about a kind of haunted way of being, you could say.
Okay, so we're not talking actual ghosts, apparitions, that sort of thing.
No, not literally. It's more about how past ideas or promises or even cultural forms continue to exert an influence, even after they're supposed to be over.
Got it. So in this deep dive, we're going to unpack this, starting with the philosopher Jacques Derrida, who really kicked things off.
That's right. And then we'll see how this idea pops up, in culture, maybe even in how we feel about things personally.
Sounds good. Because, like you said, hauntology can sound intimidating.
It can, but the core idea, I think, is quite relatable. Think about those big ideals from the past or futures people imagined or even just styles that were meant to fade away.
Right.
When they don't quite disappear or maybe never fully arrived in the first place, they can linger, like these ghosts, subtly affecting the here and now.
So let's talk Derrida. He introduced this in a specific work, didn't he?
Yes, in 1993, in his book Spectres of Marx, that's where he really digs into this play between haunting and ontology.
And his main target was?
He was really questioning the philosophical idea that the present moment is this whole self-contained thing, completely separate from what came before or what might come after.
So the present isn't sealed off. It's always contaminated, maybe, by the
Mhm.
past?
Contaminated is one way to put it, or
Okay.
just marked, influenced. For Derrida, being itself is never fully present, never totally complete. It's always shaped by absence.
Absence, meaning what's not there, or what used to be there.
Both, really. What's gone or what was promised but never quite materialized.
Yeah.
It forces us to rethink how we see time, identity. It's quite
I think
fun
that's a
work.
big shift in thinking. Do you have an example from Derrida himself?
Oh, absolutely. The classic one he uses is right from the start of the Communist Manifesto. You know the line.
A specter is haunting Europe.
The specter of communism, exactly. So Derrida writes this after the fall of the Berlin Wall, after many declared communism dead and buried.
Right, the end of history narrative was strong then.
Very strong. But Derrida says, look, even if the political system collapsed, the specter, the ideas, the critique of capitalism, the desire for something different that hasn't just vanished, it still haunts the present, it still exerts influence.
Okay, so the specter isn't just a poetic way of saying a lingering idea, it's more fundamental for him.
Yes, precisely. It's not just a metaphor. For Derrida, the specter exists in this weird in-between state. It's not fully present like a chair you can touch,
Uh-huh.
but it's not completely absent either. It's not really alive, but it's not dead and gone. It occupies this liminal zone that messes with our usual logic, our neat categories of present absent absent, alive dead.
That's fascinating. It disrupts things. Suggests the past isn't just filed away neatly in a history book.
Exactly. It's
Yeah.
still active in a
Yeah.
way, resonating. And this leads straight into how hauntology messes with our standard idea of time.
The simple past, present, future line.
Right. Hauntology suggests time is much more layered, maybe recursive, echoing. The past isn't just over. It keeps reverberating, sometimes in uncanny ways.
Uncanny, like Freud's idea of the familiar becoming strange.
There's definitely a connection there. It's that feeling of something returning when it shouldn't, something that feels both familiar and alien, the past making its presence felt when you thought it was gone.
And you mentioned politics earlier. How does this layered time connect to, say, political ideas?
Well, think about failed utopias,
Mm.
or just visions of a different future that never quite happened. Socialism, certain community ideals, radical democracy.
Okay.
When those futures don't materialize, the idea of them, the potential they represented, doesn't necessarily just die.
Mm-hmm.
It can haunt the present system.
Like the end of history idea again. Capitalism supposedly won.
Right, that was the claim. But we still grapple with massive inequality, ecological crises, alienation, things those failed futures were trying to address. You could argue we're haunted by the specters of those alternative possibilities.
But that nagging feeling that this isn't quite it. that something's missing even in our current system.
Right.
That could be these unfulfilled potentials casting a shadow.
It's a very hauntological way to think about it, yes. And this idea really took off in cultural analysis, too, particularly with Mark Fisher.
Ah, yes, Mark Fisher, a key figure here. How did he apply it to culture?
Fisher and others, writing around the same time, used hauntology to talk about what they saw as a kind of stagnation in culture, especially from the 2000s onwards, a loss of the future.
A loss of the future. What does that mean in practice?
It means pop culture feeling increasingly dominated by the past. Constant recycling, referencing. Think about all the retro sounds in music. 80s aesthetics coming back again and again. The endless film reboots and sequels.
Yeah, you definitely see a lot of that. Nostalgia cycles seem faster than ever.
But Fisher argued it wasn't just simple nostalgia. He saw it as a symptom of culture, finding it difficult, maybe even impossible, to imagine genuinely new futures. We're stuck looking backwards because the forward path seems blocked, or maybe just empty.
So we keep raiding the archives.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
He had that really striking quote, something like, "The future is gone, but it is still possible to haunt the present with its specter."
Wow. The future is gone, but it is still possible to haunt the present with its specter. That really captures it. The sense of being stuck, haunted by futures that didn't happen.
Exactly. It's not just liking old stuff. It's this deeper feeling that the anticipated future, the sense of progress and novelty we maybe once expected, hasn't arrived. And that absence is felt. It shapes the culture we produce and consume.
That makes a lot of sense when you put it that way. Now, you also mentioned psychoanalysis earlier. Is there a connection there, too?
There's a definite resonance, yeah. Think about the Freudian idea of the return of the repressed.
Things we bury, memories, traumas, desires coming back unexpectedly.
Things we try to push down, individually or even collectively, but they don't stay buried. They find ways to resurface, maybe in dreams, anxieties, cultural trends.
So that feeling of being haunted by guilt or a loss you can't quite name
Right.
that connects.
Absolutely. It's that sense of something unresolved from the past making itself felt now, whether it's personal history or collective memory.
So this isn't just high-level philosophy or cultural critique. It can actually describe feelings we have in everyday life.
I think so, yes. It can be surprisingly down to earth.
Okay, give us some examples. Make it tangible.
All right. Think about when an old song comes on the radio and it hits you with this wave of emotion, but you can't even fully explain why. It's more than just memory. It's like a past feeling itself is momentarily present again.
Yeah, I know that feeling. A specific atmosphere almost.
Exactly. Or picture walking through a town, maybe an old industrial town, that has seen better days. You see the grand old buildings, maybe a bit faded now, factories closed. There's this palpable sense of the prosperity that was there.
The ghost of its former self.
Yeah, it's the feeling. It's the presence of that absence. Or think about our digital lives today.
Right.
We're hyper-connected, constantly bombarded with information and interaction, right?
Constantly.
Yet so many people feel more isolated than ever. You could argue that the original promise of the internet, this utopian vision of connection and community, hasn't fully panned out. And we're kind of haunted by that gap, leading to this weird mix of noise and loneliness.
That's a really interesting take. The promise lingering as a kind of ghost against the reality.
It's one way to read it, yeah. The key thing is, it's not just being nostalgic for the good old days. It's stranger than that. It's the weird intrusion of something absent into the present.
Okay. So bringing it all together, what are the big philosophical takeaways from Hauntology if we zoom out again?
Well, fundamentally, it challenges the idea of a clean slate, a pure origin.
Yeah.
Everything it suggests is already influenced, already haunted by what came before.
No starting from zero.
Right. And similarly, no final endpoint either. No neat conclusion where everything gets resolved. Things linger, echo, return.
And no absolute pure presence in the moment.
Exactly. We can never experience something completely free from the shadows of the past or the anticipation of what might be next. Presence is always mixed, always incomplete.
Which implies that identities, histories, ideologies, they're all shaped by what they leave out.
Precisely. What they exclude or forget or repress. The ghosts are often found in those gaps, in what's been pushed aside.
So to be absolutely clear, we're talking about the unsettled nature of reality. The way the past bleeds into the present, not actual spirits.
Exactly right. It's a philosophical tool, a way of understanding the complex, often uneasy relationship between what was, what is, and what might have been. It's about incompleteness.
This has been incredibly helpful in unpacking what felt like a tricky concept. So The core idea is that the past isn't past. It's active. It shapes us now in ways we might not even realize.
That's the heart of it. And maybe by understanding this idea of hauntology, you can become a bit more attuned to those hidden currents, the unrealized possibilities, the lingering influences that are all around.
That's a powerful thought to end on. So maybe something for you, the listener, to reflect on. Have you ever had that feeling, that sense of something absent but still somehow there?
Hmm.
How might thinking about it through this lens of hauntology change how you understand that feeling? What ghosts, lost futures, lingering pasts might be subtly shaping your own present?
Definitely food for thought.
Indeed. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.